So I was out here the other day, and we're making fair decorations. So I'm an ag teacher, and fair's coming up. Ooh. And I was out in the shop, and somebody asked me why I have like 4 different sets of sockets in my toolbox. They're all the same thing, right? Every one of them's exactly the same, but they're not. So today, I want to talk about what's the difference between a 12 point and a 6 point, and whatever else is in there. Okay, so we've got a bolt and it needs turned in whatever it is, right? So the question is, if we've got one bolt, then how come we have 1, 2, 3, 4 different choices to turn it? Well, they're all different. So if we start with these guys, standard length sockets, where you don't have a whole lot of room, most of your stuff, obviously done with these guys. You don't need these longer ones for a lot of different things, and actually we'll talk about these here in just a second. So generally these are pretty strong, so if you're going to put a lot of force on stuff with just hand tools, then I like to stay with these short guys here. Okay, it's 6 and 12 point. We'll talk about that in a second. And then we've got these guys. So our deep well. So deep well is obviously deeper. You can see the sides go all the way down on both the 6 and the 12 point, all the way down to the bottom. So these guys are not necessarily just for turning just the top of our bolt, but let's say we have a really long bolt here, and we have a nut that comes up it and attaches, and we have all this extra length of thread down here. Now, the short guy is not going to be able to reach over all that thread and get all the way down to the bottom to get that nut off. So we have these longer ones, these deep well sockets, that goes over all the thread and then turns that nut until it's off. Okay? Now, reasons why we have short ones and we have long ones. Short ones are quite a bit heavier. So you have less material, but you're putting the same amount of force on it. Means that there's less deflection, just with all of the metal trying to turn and all the forces put on it. So if you're going to put a lot of force on something, you're going to try to get a rusty bolt on stock, or you're working with automotive purposes, short ones are your bet, unless you need a long one. Okay? Now, these long ones, just like any other tool, if you need it, you need it. That's all there is to it. But you should not use deep well for everything. I see people using deep well for everything, and they end up breaking them. So if you're taking like a flywheel off, or head bolts or something like that, and you don't need a deep well, don't use it. Especially, I see people using it on impact wrenches, and they end up cracking. So they'll crack and break, or I've even seen them shatter before. Somebody trying to take a flywheel off, and they didn't need this long deep well socket, and they broke it. So, a lot of pressure, not quite as much pressure. Okay, stronger, not as strong. All right, now let's get those out of the way. So now we have 6 point and 12 point. You see here, we've got 6 sides. Looks like the top, okay, of our bolt. And then we have this 12 point guy right here, okay, which obviously has 12, okay, but the bolt still fits in and still turns nice and fine. Now, 12 point is good for kind of your general everyday sort of stuff, all right? So where it's really useful, I guess, in mechanic situations that I've used it, is where you're in kind of a tight, close quarters sort of situation, and you see where you can get on it in a lot of different positions, because it has 12 teeth instead of 6. Okay, so you can get it on it there, or let's say your ratchet doesn't fit in, or your ratchet is not a really high tooth count, so you're going to have to get on it little by little. Okay, you can get on it in a lot of different positions. Okay, so you see how little I have to rotate to get that in its next position. Now, the 6 point though, it fits in there, okay, kind of tight, and then you see how much I have to rotate it to get it to its next position, to its next position, and so forth. Okay, so there's not as much little bit of fine tuning that you can do here as you can with your 12 point. Okay, just because it has more engagement points inside. Now, the biggest thing, okay, with these is it is easier to strip the head of a bolt. And what I mean, okay, is all these edges here that the socket contacts actually put force to turn this bolt. You can strip them. Okay, you just saw off the corners of them or round it off, okay, and then cause yourself a whole bunch more pain of getting that out. You can do that more easily with a 12 point than you can with a 6 point. Okay, and it all has to do with the sides. Okay, so for this guy, for each one of those sides to be able to round off, or you to strip the head of the bolt, okay, you're going to have to put a lot more force on it and cut off a lot more material. Okay, this is all going to have to squeeze out and deform a lot more than with the 12 point. Okay, because the teeth are smaller, and then in between you have that extra point, which gives a little bit of relief. So there's less of this side actually ends up having to come off than with a 6 point socket. Okay, so let me demonstrate that graphically. All right, so here, let's say we have a 6 point here, and we have a 12 point on this side. Okay, now while it's in there, our 6 point, okay, this is going to be a little exaggerated, but is going to follow the contour of that bolt head somewhat like that. Okay, now let's say that this is spinning, we're loosening it, okay, we put a lot of pressure. All right, then this whole area in here has to become deformed, okay, as it spins around to clear this flat side. Okay, so every one of those have to deform to make the top of this round, okay, to clear this flat side. Now, over here on our 12 point, our engagement is a little bit different. Okay, so it comes over here, and then we have this relief, or that extra tooth there in the middle. It comes over here, extra tooth, and so forth. Okay, now, sorry. What happens here, if we're still going to rotate it, okay, or loosen it out, a much smaller piece of that has to deform, okay, for that socket to become useless, okay, because of this relief right here. It just has to overcome this little hump right here and this little hump right here on each side, rather than this whole flat side. Okay, so 6 point, strip out bolts a lot less, okay, and you can put more force on it without damaging the head. 12 point, probably not your best choice if it's a stuck bolt or rusty, or it's something that's got a lot of torque on it that you're trying to take off. So just use the 6 point. All right, a few honorable mentions here that I get questions about. So we've got our standard depth sockets, 12 point, 6 point. We've got our deep well, okay, same thing. Now, we've got this guy here, looks like 13/16, just a regular 6 point socket, until, ooh, there's something different. Well, you see the bottom, okay, and then on the inside is the biggest difference. It's got a rubber bushing in the middle. Now, this is made to be a spark plug socket. Now, everybody knows what a spark plug looks like. You've got the part that actually goes into the motor, and then on the top, you have a ceramic tip, okay, or an insulator that comes up, and then your spark plug wire attaches to it. Now, that ceramic part that sticks up will break super easy. So if you put just a regular socket on there, what happens is you have a whole bunch of room here in the middle, and then if your socket, if you're, you know, turning on it, can actually get kind of cocked sideways, and it'll break your spark plug in half. Now, no good, because spark plugs nowadays are actually getting kind of expensive. So you don't want to break your spark plugs, so they make sockets for it. Okay, The ceramic part goes up and fits tightly up inside the rubber insulator, and as you turn it, kind of grabs onto it and holds it so it doesn't break as easy. Now, don't start putting spark plugs in here and really cranking on them, because they'll still break. Ask me how I know, because I broke a bunch. But anyways, Craftsman is doing something kind of ridiculous, and a lot of their sets that they'll sell sockets in includes this as the replacement for the 13/16 as a just their regular socket. So they don't give you this and a 13/16 regular deep well, and kind of sucks because as you see inside, it's got a special purpose. And this socket doesn't necessarily fit everything that you want it to do. So, kind of sucks. But, adapt and overcome on that. Just go out and get a different one. Okay, but we got a lot of questions on that, and that is what that guy is for. So I hope that helped a little bit. I know I didn't know the difference for a long time, and I stripped many bolts with 12-point ridiculousness, and now I pretty much use 6-point for everything. So my 12 points have got a whole bunch of dust on them, but occasionally you do have to use them. So it's just like everything else. If you run into a situation where you need it, then you've got it there and you can use it, and it saves you a lot of time and a lot of hassle. So if you liked the video, please comment, subscribe, do what you do, and thanks for watching.